welcome to Look Down There, the show where we talk about all the things we don't talk about. I'm your host, Michelle Lamore. Today, my guest is a sex educator, speaker, and self-proclaimed dildo slinger. She is the host of Sex Ed A Go-Go and New York Times The Cuts, The Probe, Sex Probes. She is dedicated to decreasing the shame and stigma around sex and sexuality, and I am also so proud to have her as one of my pleasure experts for my event, Into Pleasure, on March 20th. You can register for her class or the full day of pleasure at intopleasure.com. Please welcome my guest, Dirty Lola. Hey,
Hi.
Lola. Do you prefer
Yay.
Dirty or Lola? What do you prefer?
Either one. I go by both. I answer to both. Ooh.
Okay. You know, I have another friend named Dirty, so you would be my number two friend.
I
I
love
feel
it.
like you're doing something really good in your life if your friends all have interesting names like
Yes.
Dirty and Cherry and Fifi, whatever, It's
It's
like
life goals.
right, yeah, like okay, I'm on the right track. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. I'm so happy to have you and
Thank
chat
you
with
for
you
having
about
me.
all the sexy things. So before we get into it, how did you get into it? How did you get into this line of work?
Oh my gosh. It started literally because I was bored and monogamous and a housewife at the time. And I started a Twitter account where I just recounted my, sexual escapades, dalliances. And I was just talking about sex and started posting nudes and things. And it was just for me to kind of, I guess, in a way, act out, but and be an exhibitionist. And at first, I was anonymous, and it started turning into a blog where I was writing erotica and then talking about sex and then talking about sex and sex ed and things. And I started going to conferences. And that's when I realized I really wanted to be a part of the community. And I started Sex at a Go-Go. And that was really just because I have always been the sex friend. I was just having parties, regular house parties, nothing sex ed related, but parties. And at the end of every party, somebody would ask a question. And I end up dragging out. I had this like suitcase full of sex toys. And I'd be like, oh, have you seen this? Or have you tried this? And one night, a friend who I had actually been hosting burlesque shows for her, she said to me, you should do this for other people. And I'm like, nobody's going to come listen to me talk about sex on stage. Like, who's going to do that? And then from going to conferences, I was like, maybe somebody would do this. And once it was in my head, that was it. And I worked. It took me like a year and a half to like really pull everything together. And we had the first Sex at a Go-Go 7 years ago. And yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's still going. The Rona has kind of shut it down for now, but it'll be back. But that's how I started online.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's so funny how people really gravitate towards the people that are saying the things that they're thinking.
Yes.
Like you had the courage to get out there and talk about the things, right, that people don't want to talk about or they don't know how to talk about or they're too
Yes.
scared to talk about. It's
Yeah.
it's so refreshing and so important. It's such important work that you're doing.
Yeah. Kate Kinfield, who's a fellow educator, she calls it being a beacon of permission. And that resonated so much with me because it's true. It's like if you talk about it, somebody is going to go, oh, I can do that. Or, oh my God, I'm not alone.
Right. Yeah, and that feeling of not being alone is so important.
Very much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially now, right? In the
I
in the
know.
Rona times, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember my first vibrator. I think I was in my mid 20s and it was given to me. So I do burlesque. I was out at a burlesque convention and they gave me a goodie bag. And
Ooh.
it was like just a bullet, like Babeland something.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't know about this.
I know that
Never,
exact bullet. I know exactly
yeah.
what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
like I'd never used a toy before. I I had been like the water faucet girl, like, and for a while, like, there wasn't really much that I was doing. So I got this bullet and I was like, oh my God, like, could I use this? And it took me a while to warm up to the idea. And then, of course, I was very warm. But the thing that I learned quickly is it's very important to have fresh batteries. Damn.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Like on hand. On hand.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's a bad day, bad night, whatever. Um, so it took me a long time to get up the nerve to purchase my own.
Mm-hmm.
And really doing that first experience, going into the store and like figuring out what it is I liked and talking to someone about it. And it was so strange because I actually started teaching burlesque in a sex store
Hmm.
with toys. I had like a wall of dildos behind me as I was teaching, but it was always like, oh, this is not for me, or like, I don't need this, or like I had some sort of stigma in my head
Right.
about the use of toys. But the act of buying something for yourself is actually really empowering.
It is. It really is. Yeah. It's so many people, like in my day job, one of my day jobs, helping people through that, picking out a toy, and also trying to change the way people think of things because they are always like, well, what's popular? And I'm like, you would never go buy a microwave or a refrigerator or anything, and you wouldn't walk in and go, what's popular? Like you would take the time to figure out, like, it's either going to be like what's cheap and what you can afford, and you're either not going to put any research into it, or you're going to research and go like, oh, okay, these are the things I want from it. This is what I want to spend my money on. This is the thing I'm looking for. And people don't do that with sex toys. And I spend so much time trying to break people into the thinking of like, don't think about, it doesn't matter what's popular. That might not work for you. Magic wands are popular. They're not great for everybody. They're amazing, but not everybody's going to love it. And so many people have had bad experiences because they're just too sensitive for a toy that powerful. And so while it might be the most popular thing in the world, it doesn't mean it's for you. So it's kind of getting people to think about like, well, what do I like? And then finding something that matches up with that.
Yeah, and that's key is tapping into what do you like. And I think a lot of us maybe don't have the answer to that question, right?
Yeah.
What do we like? Like we're like me, right? I was just given that bullet. Like a lot of us are just given pleasure or the idea of pleasure, and then it's like, well, do we actually like that? Like, is it
Yeah.
actually giving us what we need in that moment? So it's kind of hard to tap into that. And also, like investing in your pleasure is a real act of empowerment and owning your worth, right? That you're
Yes.
worth that kind of pleasure.
Yeah. And also like the experimentation. Like I think I always talk about it in relation to food. You don't know you like Mexican food or Thai food or Chinese food or, pierogies or anything until you've had them. You have to experience it. And sometimes you might have to experience it at more than one place before it becomes the thing that you love. You don't just go like, oh, any of this food will do, because that's just not how like that works. And it's the same with sex toys. You have to like try things out. You might not like this style, but you might need to try it first. And so there is this level of like, you might have to put money into something that ends up not being your favorite thing. It doesn't have to be all the money. There's so many price points for things, but you should take like some time to experiment and go, will I like a rabbit? Let's try it out. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They want like, well, what's the vibrator I should have? And I'm like, you can own more than one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point, right? Do you have different cravings, different days, right? Just
Yeah.
like the food analogy. And that damn rabbit, I know that was all the rage. That was all the rage, and it was just not for me.
Neither. I'm not a rabbit fan, but
No.
so many people, they really enjoy it. And I'm like, I prefer two separate toys. I'm not big on like rabbits at all. And that was another thing of I was a person who in the beginning did go out and buy things that everybody said was the thing. And I was always disappointed. And the fact of the matter is, especially long ago, we're getting better, but a lot of toys weren't made for bigger bodies. There were things that are like, oh, this is supposed to make you come really hard. And it wouldn't be like comfortable for me, and it didn't work for me. And I would end up feeling really sad or broken or like, oh, well, it's not working for me because of me, not because it's just not the right toy. And so that's a lot of what I try to do with people too, is like, hey, this might not be for you, and that's okay. Like, it's just not the toy for you. There are other toys that are going to be great for you.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of pressure on having like mind blowing orgasms and mind blowing sex. And like, if you experience something that might be quote unquote vanilla or like, I don't know, mainstream, I guess, like, there's like a certain amount of shame that comes with that, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like
Yeah.
really, there's so much, there's so much that we can enjoy.
Yes. Yeah. And this the pleasure, like just enjoying sex. Like, I don't orgasm easily. And so a lot of times, especially with new partners, I'm just enjoying the sex and I'm enjoying the pleasure, and trying to even communicate that with people is hard, especially folks with penises tend to be very like, well, you didn't have an orgasm. It's like, no, but I had a great time. Like, this was amazing. I'd love to do it again. We can work up to an orgasm, like an orgasm might happen, but also I had an awesome time. And it's because I stopped making that my focus, because it was making me not enjoy, because I was working so hard trying to come instead of just enjoying it. And then when I started enjoying it, I actually started having orgasms more often with partnered sex, because I wasn't concentrating so hard. So I tell people that too, is like, sometimes just enjoy the ride. Like, it doesn't have to be mind blowing, and it might be mind blowing and you don't even have an orgasm. I've had sex that was off the charts that didn't involve what we think of as an orgasm. And, it was still amazing.
Yeah, like taking that goal, like not having goal oriented sex, or like it should look this way. And I think that's really hard to wrap your mind around, because I think we're so goal oriented as a society. Like, we have to get to this point, like we have to look this way, we have to get this job, make this much money, we have to come like this, it has to look like that, we have to like that toy because everybody says it's great.
Yep.
Yeah, so how can we kind of release that pressure of being goal oriented?
One of the ways for me that I found is masturbation was a big thing for me, because I was able to figure out what I liked and like how to do things on my own. And then it started with me saying, like, I don't come well with partners, but I'm really great at making myself come. So with a partner, if we have sex and then I can play with myself and maybe you can participate, it took the onus off that partner to have to get me to a place. And it was like, let's have all this amazing sex. And then if I feel like having an orgasm, I'll break out a toy. And then it started being where I would get to a point where I'd be like, I don't think I'm feeling good. I just want a nap. I don't. And so it started easing, and I started realizing, like, oh, I'm not always going for the toy, because I'm feeling really satisfied, and realizing like, oh, and what was satisfying about that? And like, this was amazing. And then also realizing like that there are different kinds of orgasms that aren't the big explosion that we associate with clitoral orgasms. And the first time I had a penetrative orgasm, I just couldn't stop. I was twitching, like I couldn't stop convulsing. And it's like, that word sounds bad, but it was literally like, I was just like, what's happening? What's going on? And my partner was like, I feel you, and it feels like you're orgasming, and I'm like, but it doesn't feel like that to me. And he's like, maybe it's a different kind. I'm like, you're right. And so then that blew my mind, because I'm like, oh, the thing that I've always thought of as an orgasm is completely different when it's happening in a different way that I'm not used to. So then that kind of added another layer of like, oh, I don't need this. So it's really been about like doing self-exploration and learning about myself and not being partner dependent, and then bringing that to partners like, this is what I like and this is how I like it. And having partners who are open to going along with that, but then having partners who challenge it, not in a shameful way, but more of like, what if we tried it this way and we see where we can go? Like, what if I did this and let's see what happens? And that's been great. Like someone who's wanting to be a part of the experimenting and who also isn't goal oriented, but is just like, let's try this and see what happens. And that's been really helpful.
Yeah, that communication is such a big part of this. And I know like that's not always the sexy thing, right? It's like the sexy thing is you burst into the door and you can't keep your hands off each other and you're running into all your picture frames, and that's how we have sex. We don't talk about it.
Right.
We just do it. Yeah.
And you can work up to that. Right. And that can be a thing you work up to. I always tell people when I watch those scenes, in my mind, my educator mind is like, oh, they know each other really well.
But usually they don't. Usually
they don't. But like that's my suspension of belief, is that I apply that as I'm like, they know each other really well, and so they know that they're really into this and it's not making you awkward. I've also had really hot communication as it's happening. I've had somebody walk towards me while asking me, like, do you like being slammed against walls? And I'm like, I love it. And as he got closer, then he slammed me against the wall. But it wasn't like done like, let me take a survey. It was a deep, growly voice. And he's like, and I was like, he was ready to pivot if I said no. Like he was ready with whatever. He had questions. And later I was like, well, what if I would have said no? He's like, well, I would have asked you if you like having a hand around your neck, or I would have asked you if you like to be kissed really hard, or I would have asked you, like, he's like, I had other places to go. And I'm like, you were prepared. I love it. And that's the whole thing, is you have to put some work into it. Like there's work, and the not assuming that this is what everybody wants. Because I've been in those awkward places where somebody has pushed me up against a wall and I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. And it wasn't hot. I was more having freeze response, because I'm like,
yeah.
do I want to be here right now? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great to also check in with yourself. So it's not only communicating with your partner, but also communicating with yourself. And like you mentioned, masturbation and really getting to know yourself. And I felt that way too, because, once I got into toys, and then I was like, well, what I want to see, can I go analog? Can I can I do this on my own? And just exploring that, and also like not getting to the point where you're feeling frustrated, right? Because and just experiencing it without having a goal, and just touching yourself without like, okay, well, I have to come, right? So for me, I would set a timer, and I was like, well, I'm just going to touch myself for 10 minutes just to explore. And I felt like that was such a great way for me to connect with my body and connect with my pleasure in a way that didn't have a lot of pressure put on me.
Yeah. Or I love a good before bed, because it's kind of like you're already in bed, you're already relaxing, you're slipping into slumber. It's very like low level, low key, and it's like, if you come, great. And if you don't, you just are probably going to fall asleep. It's relaxing and it takes the pressure. I also like self date nights. I like lighting a candle and kind of just setting a mood, and more just to get my head in that space, because it's hard for me to turn off my brain, especially now without not getting that outside stimulation. It's so much, but like turning off my phone, like turning off the notifications, lighting a candle, having the door closed, all these things to just kind of make almost like a sanctuary kind of moment is really, really helpful. And then I have a lot of toys, but I tend to gravitate towards a couple, but sometimes I'm like, no, tonight you have to try something new. Like you can't try the thing that you're going to come with. Pull out the thing that you rarely use and see what happens, and like see how it feels, and like go through that motion. And that's also fun and a way of exploring and switching things up. Because I know people worry about like, oh, am I going to be desensitized? And it's like, no, your brain is just really smart. and it starts connecting with, this is the thing that makes you come. So when you use that, it's always going to work. And when you don't use that, your brain's like, I'm confused. Why aren't we using the thing that works? So now it has to learn a new thing. And that's why it feels like, oh, you're not getting there. And so when you switch up, it helps, like moving your different toys around and going, oh, this is a new one in the rotation for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. What's some of your favorite toys? Your go-tos?
I'm definitely Hitachi girl. That's because I like a lot of power. I need a lot of power, and it keeps up. Like it's not going to die. I have the rechargeable version, so it's like good, and I love it because you can also use it when it's plugged in. So if I forget to charge it, I can plug it in and still use it. It's great. I love the suction toys. I haven't found like the Womanizer and the Satisfier and like Lola.
About the name Womanizer, I hate it.
I hate the name. I hate it so much. And when they came out, there were two things. So when it came out, I walked up to the then owner because they sold it to WeVibe. So now WeVibe. And I really wish WeVibe would just change the name and just say formerly Womanizer, like change the name and then keep telling people that it used to be the Womanizer, so for name recognition until it takes hold. But like, I just really want them to change it. But I told the owner, I was like, do you know how awful your name is? And that and I had gotten it for free. I was like, I love your toy. It's amazing. 1, it's too expensive. And 3, the name. And so those last 2 things, I would have never tried it if it wasn't free. And he was like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, because it's a toy that is not usual. It's still a toy that a lot of people aren't used to. It's been around 3 or 4 years now. They've been out, those toys, but it's still a shape that a lot of people with clitorises have not even ventured to trying to use it and to understand, because it's not, people think it's like suction, like a vacuum, and it's more that it creates a seal. Yeah. And like that seal pulls your clit in and then it vibrates around it and it pulses. You get like pulses. They're thinking it's going to go like, and I'm like, no, it's not. Yeah. It's not doing that.
I feel like that's an advanced level.
It's an advanced, right.
I finally was like, okay, I hate the name. I'm going to get it because everyone's talking about it. So fine.
Yeah.
So I get it. And like, I like it, but I barely use it because I can't get over this mental hurdle of the name. And my husband's like, why don't you just call it the Dream Girl? And I'm like,
call it something else. Or think of it as there's so many other brands. And the thing I love is, I will say, the Womanizer of all, I've tried so many. I have like 4 different ones, maybe 5 in my drawer right now. I like all of them, but I love my Womanizer to go. It's my top tier. It never does me wrong. Like, and I like all of them. And I'm like, when I'm using all of them, I'm like, oh, I love you. But then secretly that one's like my favorite. And yeah, but will always tell people, don't go for that brand first. I love it, but go for the brand that makes a cheaper version. Find out if you like it, because it's a lot of money to sink into something that you either can't get over the name or it's a learning curve. Like when I first tried it out, everybody said like it's a learning curve. And the way I describe it to people is, a lot of them now, they have a drum, so you're getting direct clitoral stimulation. But when they all came out, you were only getting perimeter stimulation. And that's a whole different part of the clit. Like it's a part of the clit that's not really touched and even in digital play, because we're always going from the top. You don't do a lot of side. So it's a different orgasm and it doesn't hit you the same way. And for me, it was like I put it on and I had it and it felt good, but I was like, am I doing it right? And I wasn't sure. And I'm like, this. And then it slowly started welling up. And then suddenly I came and I almost fell off my fucking bed. And I call it like it's a surprise party in a waiting room, because you're waiting. You know you have an appointment, right? You know you have an appointment. You know it's going to happen. You know you're supposed to come. But then instead of just your doctor coming out and calling you back, it's like surprise party. Like that's how I describe it, because it hits you so fast. And it's just a whole different area of the clit, but it's a big learning curve. Everybody's clit's not the same. A lot of the toys, like some of them, the mouth is really small. I like the ones I do appreciate Womanizer makes different nozzles, and you get different sizes when you buy the toy, so you can pop it off and like put a bigger one on if you need it. But now we're in the case of when people want to buy these things, I'm like, they're like, well, what's the difference? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of difference. Like, I don't know what your clit looks like, but is it going to fit in this? If you have a larger clit, like there's ones that are going to work for you. It's not going to feel good. For some people, like the holes are too big. They're like, I'm not getting a proper seal. Like I have a fat pussy, so that matters. Like if it has a big mouth, sometimes it's too much pressure in other places. So, but I know that stuff about my body. So I always try to give people that guidance of, I don't know what your body looks like, but think about what your pussy looks like. And, what are your labia like? And will this fit around your clit? Is this going to hurt you being pressed against your body? Is it going to be too much pressure in other places? Do you want that pressure? And that stuff nobody thinks of. Nobody.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
they don't think about what their pussy looks like at all.
Right. I mean, knowing your body is essential. I mean, that's why I created this, because like we have to look at ourselves, right? We have to know what we're dealing with, and it takes a lot of effort and intention to get to know that part of our body. But
it does. Yeah.
You just had a really great experience getting up close and personal with your pussies. So
I did.
Tell me about that.
So an artist reached out to me and asked if I would like that. She's doing a project. She does other projects that are really well known, but this one she's attempting to do like anonymously. I guess she doesn't want the same kind of stuff attached to it, which I get. But she's doing this anonymous vulva project where she's just asking women from all walks of life to take photos of their vulva, and then she's painting these like hyper realistic photos. And I didn't know what to expect, but she had really specific guidelines. She's like, get a picture while you're aroused, but like in the sunlight. And I'm like, how am I making this happen? And it needs to be close up. And so it was really hard. And it turned out I was able to see my partner for a bit. And I was like, I need your help taking this photo. And we were like under a skylight with me with my hips up on a pillow, like trying to angle it into the sun. And she's like, this is great. Because she needed like the detail of it. And she's painted, it's a 6 foot tall, hyper realistic painting of my vulva, and like you see my clit and all this stuff. And it looks like a photo. Like, it's weird. I would think it was a photo if I hadn't gotten, like, she sent me updates throughout. So I have everything from like her beginning sketch to the different layers and all the things to like the finished product. And she sent me, I have a print of it, but it's amazing to think that there's like my vulva is out there and it's 6 feet tall. It's for everyone to see it. And there's so many other, like, she sent me some examples when she was talking to me about the project. And I'm just, these are amazing, the detail. And she's short. And so she like showed these pictures of her like with the picture upside down because she needs to get to a certain point. And she's doing all these, like the hair, and it's just amazing what she's doing. But to see your vulva that big and all the detail, and that and taking a photo is a whole journey in itself, because you're always like, I want it to look pretty or whatever. And you're like but you can't style it when somebody's like, no, it needs to be this close and the light. We need this kind of lighting and this is what we're looking for. And yeah, but I've just gotten to a place where I'm just very like, oh, you want to paint me? Okay. Yes. Sure. What do you need?
I love that, and I need her info.
Yes, I will send it your way.
I have a lot of photos she can work from.
Here's for you.
Okay, Dirty Lola, we're wrapping up here. So where can people find you? Maybe, post Rona, see your sex ed go-go?
Yeah. You can find me. I'm always on Instagram and Twitter at Dirty Lola on both of those. I don't know where Sex Ed Go-Go will be, but you can follow me on those 2 places. Also, the website, sexedagogo.com, and I'll be posting updates as we plow through this. And once we get a location, it'll be back. And I'm looking forward to hopefully late 2021 being able to do a show. So we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I love it. And I'm so excited again to work with you for Into Pleasure happening on March 20th. So
Excited.
make sure you sign up. We have a full day of virtual pleasure. Go to intopleasure.com to register for the full day, or you can choose your pleasure a la carte.
Yay.
Yay! All right, so spread your legs and spread the love. Like us and love us and follow us and share us. And you can follow us on Instagram at I Look Down There, or you can follow me at Michelle L'Amour. And again, go to intopleasure.com for March 20th. And a friendly reminder to grab a mirror and look down there.